What is going on? We are just getting going. See some folks out there. Welcome. Uh, Excited for this conversation. This is Content Distribution Live, and this is our third episode. Um, the topic is one that resonates with me. We're going to be talking about earning content distribution opportunities through relationship building. My name is Brett McGrath. I lead marketing at The Juice. If you are unfamiliar or if you're not already signed up for The Juice, you should sign up. It's free. Get access to the largest library of B2B marketing and sales resources on the planet. Kat, who is helping me out today in the back end, will be I want to thank her in advance. But Kat, if you could maybe drop a link for The Juice, and if people aren't already members, go ahead and do that. But this topic today is something that is near and dear to my heart. We have been really thinking about relationships and thinking about content distribution as we've built and developed the Juice brand. And so I'm excited to not only kind of maybe share some experiences, but connect with other marketers who are doing this on a regular basis. It really gives me a ton of energy. And two of the marketers that I'm here with today, I promise you, are going to be full of insight and information, and we're going to bring them on stage real soon. It's Mariya Delano, who's the founder at Kalyna Marketing, and Derek Flint, who's the marketing manager at 10 Speed. If you have not been a part of the Content Distribution Live or any of the events at The Juice, it is super conversational. We try to keep things as informal as possible, but also give you some insight. So a successful event for us is if you leave this event and you have like one or two things that you can go take and apply back to your work. So that's really our goal here. And if you have questions, if something Mariya or Derek says during the conversation inspires you, definitely put that in the chat. We have time at the end for questions. So want to get to as many questions as possible from you at the end. And before we kind of kick things off, I want to run a quick poll. I'm curious on how many marketers or brands do you all collaborate with regularly on content distribution efforts? Want to look at those results and maybe use that data towards the end of the conversation. One last plug. I promise this is the final plug. We plug things. We're marketers. Social media. So maybe, Kat, if you move to the next slide. We are always excited to have our conversation shared via social. So if anything anyone says inspires you, definitely take to Twitter, go to LinkedIn, do all the things. We're at the Juice HQ. I'm at Indy McGrath. Hit the follow, message me, do all those things. I love connecting with the audience after events like this. So we're going to kind of take this conversation in three different sections, but this is going to be a ton of fun. I'm done doing the housekeeping things and excited to bring the guests on stage. So Kat, if you could help me bring Mariya and Derek on stage to get things going, that would be fantastic. What's up?
Hey.
Hello.
How Derek, Mariya, just to give people a little peek behind the curtain. We were talking about weather and hurricanes and tornadoes. This is what marketers do before we host these sorts of conversations. So I think we're all okay today. We're indoors. We're going to be talking about relationships and distribution. So I'm glad you both are safe. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I haven't been a part of the green screen experience or the green room experience free. I actually really like that. That's a great way to enter an event.
Yeah, shout out to our friends at Goldcast who are helping power this event. And so when we were thinking about, Content Distribution Live, obviously we want to talk about content distribution, but I think the relationship component is super powerful and one of those things that we don't often think about. So excited to dig into it with both of you. And just to let the audience know, kind of this first section that we'll be talking about is how to identify and prioritize strategic relationships for content distribution. So when I think about this, I think about like this discovery phase when we're trying to figure out like who are the brands, who are the people we want to work with. And oftentimes I think people look at the numbers. It's like, all right, this brand has this massive following on LinkedIn, or this individual gets a lot of likes every time they post. So they're kind of in the same space as us. So let's go reach out, try to build a relationship and partner so we can benefit from their audience. But maybe that doesn't always work, or maybe isn't a great starting point. So maybe Mariya, I start with you. Just like, what are the top traits that you think we should take into consideration before we reach out to brands that we're thinking about collaborating on distribution with?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot to it, right? And of course, this may change depending on exactly what you're doing, what brand you are, what you're going for. But one of the things that we always look for is we kind of go beyond follower count into quantifying reach by combining the size of the platform with what percent of our target audience is actually within that reach, right? So we tend to use SparkToro for this because that gives us a nice number, like percent of audience that follows this person. So we multiply that by the size of their following or by the amount of traffic that they get. And that gives us the first quantifiable reach metric as to the size. And then beyond that, and this is where it does get tricky, and I think more important, seeing how much of a fit are you actually, right? Like, what do they talk about? What do they make content about? We're talking about content distribution. So you want to see what content do they usually create? What content do they share? What content do they seem to like and comment on? Is there any alignment in terms of topics or angles? Is there anything you could contribute as your brand or your expertise? And then also just seeing like how engaged are people? Because you have these accounts with like millions of followers, or on LinkedIn, like, I don't know, 100,000 plus, and they get like no likes or no comments on anything they post. And it's like, okay, cool. You might get access to their platform if they shared something, but is anybody going to look at it? Is anybody going to click? Are you actually going to get any results that you're looking for? I wonder what Derek thinks as well.
Yeah, I love listening to Mariya talk about this because she does this as like a service. So it's like great to get this sort of like a framework built around it. I think sometimes for me, the like discovery phase it doesn't really start and end. It's sort of an ongoing thing, which I think is kind of true for everyone. But if I had to like break it down, it's like definitely level of engagement and activity. You know, are these people participating where you're seeing them? You know, because it's like one thing for the brand to be on there. We've all wanted to target a brand on LinkedIn and then saw like, yeah, but there's no employee engagement here. Like no one's representing this brand. Another huge thing is like momentum and stage that they're at, like where I want to see them distribute or like participate in content with us. Part of that is like, I really want them to be achieving momentum. So they're worth like their reach is better for us and we can grow off of that. And another part of that is just like, how realistic is it that like I'm going to get them to say yes to me if they're this kind of massive, elusive brand that doesn't maybe need me in any way, shape, or form, or I just can't get their attention. And then the last bit maybe that I would add is like a mix of like, what's their reputation? And do I want to combine that with our brand's reputation? I know we were kind of joking behind the scenes, but like we've all come across like people who like use strategies and have this public persona that I'm like, it's too risky. Like, I don't want to tie myself to this. And then there are other people in this space who are really, there's something about them that draws people towards them. They're sincere. Everyone wants to be tied to them. And so you're really looking for those sorts of people. And then when I'm ready to shortcut those, where I'm like, I can't get in there, I start kind of mapping out like how many degrees of separation are people in my organization from all of these people, right? Like for me personally, you know, I've been doing content marketing and SEO, and my network is a lot of people in the trenches. But like our CEO / co-founder, Nate, has been around the SaaS game, you know, as like first marketer of Sprout for so long that he's naturally developed this massive network and can get us into rooms or partnered with people much easier than I can. So utilizing that, I think, is huge.
There's so much that both of you said that I feel like I could just attack, and we could like take it off the rails and just have a whole conversation just based off of some of the topics. But some things that resonate with me is this idea of fit. Mariya, you mentioned that, and how maybe we shouldn't just all get caught up in the numbers, but like understanding fit is really important, because quality matters over quantity, especially if we're trying to, attack or get our message and attack a new audience and get exposure to a new group of people. We want them to be the right type of people. And then Derek, what you said around this discovery, like it just never stops. It's ongoing. And I think having that mindset and just understanding that it's always a part of the process, and having that kind of turned on at all times will likely lead to more opportunities that just might come your way. So one of the things, Derek, you we're digging into at the end a little bit, and I'd love to like shine a light on it a little more, is just like, once that individual is identified, like the approaches, like what are the tactics, what are the approaches? You mentioned like the 7 degrees of separation, the Kevin Bacon maybe strategy to getting in front of people. But maybe talk a little bit further about that. Just like, what are some ways that you can actually get the attention of people so that you can eventually work with them on some sort of collaboration opportunity?
Yeah. So Mariya and I were talking about this a little bit, and I have some tactics and tricks, but I do want to preface, I think most of us know this. It's just sort of like, when you break down like relationship building and like collaboration invitations, I think it can feel a lot like how to do cold outreach, which isn't really the point. And like, if I were to break down like how you make a friend, like at some point a checklist to make a friend just like misses the plot entirely. So I would preface that, but some easy ways that if I'm like trying to provide some tactical frameworks are just like, I like to watch for, if I see someone and I see them interacting, like watch for moments of play, or watch for moments of like sincere shared interests. So there are times when something resonates with me, with a person who's on my radar, and I know like if I get a chance, I'm taking it. But then the right moment strikes where they share something, they distribute something. And the moments of play just being like, you see someone doing something silly, or they're sharing something more personal. Like I know like people my age and like marketers sort of in our seats might have young children. They share something about that. All of a sudden, like this natural relationship can form over those topics. Another bit is just like showing up for people. So if you want someone's attention, it's like, well, watch their content, engage with it. Even like being on The Juice today was sort of like, well, I went and watched the first 2 episodes because I wanted to be a good guest. And like, I like when The Juice succeeds, I succeed. And that's all part of that as well. The other part is just like flattery goes a long ways. Like if you really want someone's attention, like the low effort flattery is like, make a list of, people doing really cool things and include them, kind of be that character. And then I think if you have to go way back and you don't have any relational capacity with these people, the first step to relationship building may actually be you creating content in the space where they also create content, which I know is way, way back. But if they don't have any reason to build a relationship with you, then like that might be the first step in that relationship building process.
I love it. And Mariya, I want to kick it to you, but before I do, I want to comment on something you said. And this is so basic. And this is just, if you're not doing this, you're not even going to be in the game. But the comment you made about content, like we as creators put everything about our brand and ourselves out there through all the channels. Like it is so easy to just go pick up information from the people you're trying to reach based on consuming their content. And most times people don't even do that. So if I can't tell that someone's not even doing the work to listen to the podcast, to listen to the event, to read the article and play some of that back to me, then to me, it's like, all right, you're not even trying. So I think that's a super easy thing to do and a great call out, and just wanted to put an exclamation point on that. But Mariya, what do you think?
Yeah, I honestly want to just add to all of that because I agree. I see content as one of the ways of showing up very publicly, because one of the risks you take, right, if you actually take somebody up on their outreach or on their offer to build a relationship, is you're actually trusting that they will also be beneficial to you in some way, right? That they will be valuable in some way, if we're thinking from the point of view of somebody that we're trying to reach out to. And what is one of the ways to show that you will actually be valuable and that you're not just sweet talking them to get something out of them and not do anything else? It's to also put your reputation on the line in a little, like in a way, right? It's to show up for them very publicly, to have your name out there, maybe associated with theirs, right? Even just by shouting them out, like shout them out maybe on LinkedIn in their comments, right? Or do something like quote them in your newsletter, quote them on your blog, mention them in a podcast you're doing, right? In a webinar. Like when you're actually showing that you genuinely value somebody else's work and their opinions, and you're willing to shout them out and get them a little bit of distribution, even if it's just a few people, even if you have a tiny platform, that shows that you care. That shows you're for real. It demonstrates that you're not just doing one of those plays where it's like you're sending out 100,000 emails pretending like you actually care about people and you're just filling in with the blanks with AI, right? One of the best ways to show you're not doing that is to actually organically talk about why you like somebody's work.
Is there, Mariya, maybe sticking with you, just thinking about this, I think when I think about collaboration and the idea of working together with someone who I might just see on the internet or on LinkedIn, it could be like it could be scary for the person making the ask, where it's like, I don't want to get shut down, I don't want to get ignored, but I think that's just part of it. But I'm curious, just based on you kind of connecting, building relationships, if you found like the best ways to introduce this idea of collaborating with you and your brand. Like what maybe like what is one thing that has worked well for you in the past?
Don't do it at the start is the key.
Call.
Don't just ask for collaboration from the get-go. Assume that you need to prove yourself to them first, right? Like I never go in with an ask usually. Like it's very, very rare. And when I do, it's a big risk, and it's because there's some deadline or something else coming up. But usually, whether it's for myself and my agency or for clients, we never, ever, ever start by asking for anything. First, we just show that we're doing something for them, whether it's bouncing ideas, whether it's like helping engage and boost them in the algorithm, whether it's quoting them and getting them backlinks. And the way we reach out initially is just to show what we've done and to show, hey, look, we've been paying attention to you, we care about your content, and we've been trying to help you out in our own way by contributing how we can, right? And, you know, sometimes those initial introductions can be even more casual than that. For example, we're currently working on getting a client into a newsletter that's like an industry newsletter with a couple thousand subscribers that are all industry professionals in data analytics. And the way I got that connection was I followed the person who writes the newsletter weeks ago. And then he posted something about getting seafood from Costco. And I just commented on it because it was a ridiculous post. I was like, I want to see how much seafood you got. And he like posted the picture, and then we talked about that for a bit. I didn't talk to him for like 2 weeks. And then I reached out being like, hey, you know, I've been reading your newsletter for a while, and I'd been pressing likes so he can see if he goes through the likes on his Substack that I have been. I've been trying to get a client placements. Would you be interested? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So now we're discussing guest post ideas, and there was no more to that. It was very, very simple and very human, and I didn't have a plot in mind necessarily. I was mostly trying to be aware of the data analytics space, who's in there, and then I was seeing who did I make a connection with naturally, and then I'm going to reach out.
Be a human being, and reciprocity is super powerful. I love it. Derek, what about you before we jump to the next section?
All right, I have to do one quick aside, which is to say that like the reason I got invited here was my connection to Mariya, and Mariya and I got connected because if you want to watch someone be personal, just follow Mariya's journey in general. But she pinged me because she knew I liked the SparkToro brand, and then she ended up making an ugly sweater for them, pitched it as like swag they should do, got their attention, and like that was how this all formed. So like that's just a quick aside on like ways you can get into rooms. On the more practical side, I kind of parse this out. So like if I have low relational capacity with someone and I want to do collaboration, I'm going to make it very easy for them to collaborate with me. Again, you're just setting yourself up for luck, but it's like, I might just ask for a quick quote. We're creating content together. Can I get your insights? I'm going to flatter you a little bit, but I also want your brand to be a part of this because I'm aware I come from an agency. People sometimes want proof from another in-house person that like you're a trustworthy agency, things like that. And then if I have high relational capacity with you, we can work on like bigger projects that like there's not a strict way that this goes, or we don't really know how this entire collaboration is going to work out. Sometimes when we're working with another brand, like DataBox or something like that, and we can use that effort. They're trialing with a lot of us. Part of their, what's that thing they're working on right now that they just released? It's like benchmarking, where you can add a bunch of data and it anonymizes it. And we're like, we can get cool. That's like our version of first party data, and we can work with them to create some content possibly. But the beauty of that is like Nate already had a connection to someone there, and we had been connected to like John Bonini and their CEO, Pete. And because we don't really know entirely what that will look like as a finished project, we get a lot of FaceTime with their team that just builds on this relational capacity. And now we've like shared podcast guesting, and we've like helped each other get on lists and things like that, where it all kind of starts bleeding together.
So I just want to call this out for anyone who's watching this live. Like all of this stuff that is being said are the tactics, ideas that we all think about when we see on LinkedIn or any other platform brands elevating, people partnering with other people. And we ask the question, like, how are they doing this? Like, how does this happen? Like, this is how it happens. So I'm like really fired up about like this conversation already because I'm learning a ton. And also like, I'll call this out because we're like, talking about it, but just like the fact that like organically, DataBox has been mentioned, like SparkToro has been mentioned. It's like these mentions are happening, right? And so like that's like free publicity for these brands just based on like your connection to them. So I think like that in and of itself is super powerful. And it's like my big takeaway here is like, don't think about yourself first. Like think about the other brand and what their goals, what their values are, and how you can kind of wedge in and help amplify everything they're doing. So we're done with the first section. There's a ton on my mind. I've got a lot of thoughts racing, but section number 2, maybe talk about a topic that we don't talk about enough just as marketers, and that's nurturing. Curious on just like, we're going to be talking about how to nurture relationships, building trust, which is my favorite topic, and offering value when you are the smaller platform, trying to reach out to a bigger platform. And I feel like anyone living in startup land, it's mostly you're always the smaller guy or gal. It's just how it works. So I think learning how you both are achieving this will be super important. But maybe we kick it off with you, Mariya. Like, what approaches can we take to validate like our previous work, like your agency, what it does, like why it's credible to bigger brands in a way that builds interest for them?
Yeah, I would say something I've noticed is so many people honestly overestimate how much size of platform as the main kind of value you could bring to somebody. Because the more I've engaged with brands and individual creators who have like pretty big freaking platforms, the more I've realized like they don't care that much about the size of other people's platforms. They have it. They're fine. They don't feel particularly insecure about it. And what they care about is stuff they can't get from most of that crowd. Because you'd honestly be surprised. Somebody can have 100,000, 500,000 followers, and almost none of those people will actually talk to them like a real human. Because so many people see the title, they see the follower count, they see the reputation, and they immediately start acting like these psychopathic robots, as if they're not talking to another person on the other side. They're just talking to this like vehicle to get results and kind of nothing else, right? And so these people, like sincerely, the bigger their platform, the more this has been the case in my experience. They're just really, really desperately looking for somebody to talk to them like a human. Like, not a joke. That is the best way to stand out. Just act like they're another human, ignore their follower count. Like, obviously you can acknowledge it if it's relevant, but don't assume that they won't care about what you have to say just because you're small. Because honestly, that is the most valuable thing of all, to not be somebody who's kissing up to them just because of their follower count, to not be the person that's messaging them, be like, oh my God, I love your work. Can you please support my startup? Right? Or can you please let me guest post on your blog? Like, that's not going to work, right? Ask them about things that they seem to be interested in. If somebody's creating online a lot, it's so easy to see what they care about. It's so easy to see what they're thinking about. One of the things that we often try to do as a tactic is look for times when a creator or brand mentions that they've wanted to talk about something, but they haven't had the time or resources to make content about it. Right? Because you'll often get that, like, especially if you're listening to a podcast interview or a webinar, but even in posts, somebody will mention, yeah, I did this and it would be really interesting to explore it further, or it would be really interesting to write something about this question. But it's clear that they don't have the time to do it yet. So if you go in and you do it for them, and you do it in a way that promotes them, maybe even refers to the time they mentioned it, maybe builds on their previous work, and you send it to them, you've just offered a crap load of value. You've saved them time, you've saved them effort, and now they have a thing to promote that fits in with what they were already trying to do. It's really not that hard.
Yeah, I have a follow-up for you, Mariya, on this. But before I ask it, I did a bad job and forgot to plug it. So if you have questions, definitely drop those in. We're going to spend some time at the end answering questions. So definitely take some time to drop those in as thoughts come to your head. But maybe tactically, Mariya, just in terms of, I totally agree with what you said, like stand out from the rest, talk to them like a human. Maybe like channel, like what is the most impactful channel for you in just your outreach? Is it like hitting them up on LinkedIn? Is it just through comments? Is it finding their emailing them? Like, what has worked best for you in the past?
There's a couple. I don't actually email people very often until after I've made the connection for a while, to be honest. And I often wait for them to email me first if possible. What I do is, okay, one is LinkedIn comments. That is one of the easiest ones, I would say. Like if they post a lot on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Mastodon, what is there, Blue Sky Threads, whatever there is, showing up in the comments and actually engaging with them and asking questions and reacting to what they said, that's the easiest one. Beyond that, something that's worked extremely well for me is live chats. So if somebody's doing any kind of online event with a live chat, showing up in that live chat has honestly opened a stupid amount of doors for me in the past year. Like I've gotten like really good at this point, like dropping things in, questions, comments, like seconding stuff they've said, maybe even typing out something they said that I thought was good as a quote. Right? Sending GIFs when it's something on Goldcast where you can send a GIF, and just like engaging the other participants, because people notice that. They notice your name, they notice your picture, they notice how active you are. Everybody else starts becoming more active usually. So you're starting momentum, you're making their entire event better. And I have honestly had people reach out to me, like people with huge platforms have emailed me after these events being like, thank you for being so active in the chat. And after that, it's been, way easier to keep emailing them because they've emailed me or they added me on LinkedIn and DM'd me there.
Awesome. Derek, I would love to know your approach. I think first time we had a conversation and we met was when we were kind of doing the intro call of this, but I already in my mind kind of had a mentality of who I thought you were and kind of what you were about just by consuming your LinkedIn posts. Like I'm learning a lot regarding SEO from you, like blind spot for me, but all I have to do is go check out your post. I'm like, all right, now I have some further insight. So I think I don't know, one thing I think about is just like you're active and you post publicly about just like what you know and your knowledge. So I'm sure that helps you, but curious just on what's worked for you in the past in terms of outreach to bigger, more established brands.
Yeah, in terms of channels, it's similar. Like I love the DM, the social spaces I also own, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll email you. Like if I can figure out your email address, like of course I will. I think for me, what's always worked is kind of flexing our momentum in a space. So when we do start to pick up a little bit, even like I know at this point, given my reach on LinkedIn, that like I'm in a lot of people's like periphery. So they're not entirely cold on like who I am or who 10 Speed is for a multitude of reasons. But usually when I'm combing those larger brands, there's a part of me that's like looking for that new project that they're working on. Where I know from past experience, like that project's hard and it needs other people to participate. And there's always a limited number of people that you really want on the thing. Like we have a podcast and we love having guests on, but it's like sometimes you really got to think about who your guests are and being, really intentional about that. But I know that that's true for like Clearbit and ClearCover and all of these companies as well, as they're putting their webinar series together and they're not taking breaks. They're doing it every week. Like eventually, if they didn't want me initially, like they're going to need people. So that's been like a practical in. It's just like, what's that new thing they're building and they don't have any momentum on, but like they know that I can be a viable option or someone from our team can be. And then the other is to get way more like tactical about it, which is like, I know I cannot land this brand. I know I can't, but I have a connection with the content marketer inside of that brand. And I can feature them on our podcast because I can help them with their personal brand, which everyone loves, whether they're trying to get a promotion in their own place or they're trying to go on to their next position and demonstrate it. And just by having them on, I can sort of scoot their brand in next to them. And then that has led to continued things. So those are like two kind of tactical ways of approaching them.
So good. I love that. Before we hop out of this section into maybe some more deeper examples, Derek, we'll start with you. What does long-term success look and feel like for you when you're kind of building these relationships and nurturing these relationships to collaborate on content distribution opportunities?
Yeah. So the things that I can like semi-measure, or at least feel enough to consider them measured, because we're a small team, is generally sustained uptick in reach and engagement. As people kind of put you associated with that brand, you'll sort of notice the circulation of people interacting with that brand's content that you're in. Sometimes that means pipeline. Like we were on a webinar with ClearScope, and then ClearScope created a list after that because they enjoyed our interaction with us. That was like, SaaS companies we recommend or SaaS agencies and whatever that we recommend. And so we've actually seen, that type of relationship building result in pipeline. And then just more requests for collaboration. It starts sort of building on itself. So you'll notice that you start getting invites, like you're the person that people want to collaborate with. And a metric, because we'll set goals, or at least I set goals for our team around like number of events we get invited to and get to be on other people's platforms. And you'll start to notice that you receive more yeses to participate. And like, that's kind of a measurable thing that we'll look at. Like when we ask these brands, are we getting in there? Which says to me, like we're asking the right people, but we're also seeing, that brand interest grow. And for us, it's such a large part of our strategy that we actually see it in like our Google Search Console around like brand clicks and things like that. Like, oh yeah, brand is growing.
Mariya, what about you?
Yeah, so there's a lot that you could look into, and it obviously depends on each kind of distribution opportunity you get, like what kind of collaboration it was. Was it a shout out? Was it a share? Did they like link to you? Did you do some guest posting or going somewhere as a guest? But overall, there's a bunch of things to look for. First is, traffic in Google Analytics, like seeing where we might be getting backlinks from and seeing where people are coming from. So one thing that we often try to do is get mentioned in newsletters, because a lot of newsletters do roundups of links at the end, or they mention links in the middle. Like, I've been reading this, I like that, right? So that is a big one. Then, if they mention you on their blog, that's amazing as well. Beyond that, on socials, there's quite a bit to look for. So follower counts usually tend to go up after doing something like that, and you can notice that lift. You can see lift in terms of your actual reach, even on your own posts. Like somebody might repost you and tag you. That's amazing. Something I like even better though is when that person ends up going to my posts and liking them or commenting on them, because immediately I get a gigantic bump in the algorithm, right? If somebody with 100,000 followers, 50,000 followers goes and likes one of my posts, me who doesn't even have 2,000, I immediately get like 3,000 impressions like in a day, guaranteed, right? Just from that. So that is success in many ways. It's also public proof that this person pays attention to me and actually like thinks I'm an expert as well, right? So that's a reputation lift in a way. Just continued engagement, I would say, on socials is a big one. Getting invited to things as well, right? Getting invited for collaboration opportunities, the other person reaching out, wanting your advice on things even, right? That is success and usually a sign that you could do more collaborations later on. Like there's so much. One of the best ones is referrals. You often, as an agency person, you often end up getting referrals through these people later on. They'll be like, oh yeah, somebody was asking me, are you interested? Can I introduce you? And the other one that I noticed over time, so this is something that's happened from relationships I've had going for a few months now, is I noticed that our following, like the active people who comment on our LinkedIn posts, like our LinkedIn post, starts to merge. So I noticed that I'm seeing the same faces that are in their comment section and my comment section. And I knew they weren't there before. So it's like, okay, we're starting to get more overlap in terms of who our audience is. And that was the goal to begin with, right?
I love it. The overlap is the goal to me. If like someone is following you across channels, and like the more of that, the better. Because that to me, that's the highest quality potential customer that you could have. So much great information. I've seen a question pop in. If you have questions, drop them. I promise we'll leave some time. Want to definitely hit like specific examples, and we got maybe like a couple Easter eggs here with Mariya. Sounds like you're a designer for SparkToro. So that might be your example, maybe not. I don't know. But I want to get into the weeds a little bit and hear from both of you on just specific use cases and things you've done in the past with, creators or brands in order to kind of build that relationship and start that, content distribution relationship. So Mariya, maybe we start with you. Like what's a specific example or two that you want to shout out?
Yeah, so I can give a couple examples. I'd say the most obvious one that a lot of people probably know me for is the relationship with SparkToro. And I'd say the peak of that was these guides that I wrote about SparkToro's product. I have this series of 5 guides on my blog. And those were, well, first of all, the entire thing was kind of done and designed in collaboration with SparkToro's staff and their team. And they all knew that I was doing it. And I kept asking them questions and all of that along the way. And then at the end, their CEO, Rand Fishkin, actually reviewed the guides. And, so I could publicly thank them for that. So in the introduction, one of the first things you see is thank you to Rand Fishkin from SparkToro for reviewing that. And that gave me an insane amount of social proof, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm writing about this software. You might not know who I am, but I'm literally telling you in the very beginning that the person who makes this software, who runs that company, liked these things that I wrote and liked what I had to say. And, beyond that, they had shouted me out on socials and like reposted. So that brought a lot of people to me. They mentioned me in their newsletter, which got me 700 views in 2 hours, which was kind of insane. So that was a big one. And we've done a lot of things beyond that. But I would say that was like my pinnacle. And the way I got to them was entirely engaging on their socials for months and going to all of the live events that they were on.
Can I ask a question, Mariya, first? What for you as the marketer, what attracted you to put in so much time and energy on getting SparkToro to notice you? Like what was it about their brand?
It was a feedback loop, to be honest. It wasn't that I set out in the beginning, oh, I want SparkToro to notice me, right? It was they were one of the, like Rand and Amanda were some of the people that I was trying to target, but there was a bunch of big marketers who I aligned with in terms of ideas, views on content, views on marketing, who had big audiences that I was trying to get to at the same time. And I was kind of engaging with everybody. But the way I decided who to invest more effort into was who was reciprocating. And Rand and Amanda were reciprocating some of the most, right? They would actually reply to my questions. They would actually reply to my comments. They would retweet me back in the day, right? They would sometimes shout me out in webinars because I was constantly in their webinars, right? And the more they did that, the more I would invest effort into them because it was beginning to be a relationship. And then eventually they reached out to me, right? They were the first ones who emailed me. And that was after 8 months of continued engagement.
When you were focusing on them, obviously, like, you probably can't keep up the same pace with 50 other brands. Obviously, like the way your time energy that you put into SparkToro, I would imagine, like that process, right? You've got your list, you've got your targets, if you will. Like, how do you decide? Is it based on the engagement of where to kind of index more of your energy on? Like, is it a balancing act? Like, how do you work through that?
It's balancing act, but also it's so vibes based. It's like you just feel that it might work. You might feel like there's momentum. You feel like they're listening, right? I would say it's, do they actually seem like they would be interested in taking the relationship further and doing more thorough collaboration or shouting me out? Or do they seem like this is just a checkbox for them? I've answered a comment, okay, bye. Right. And you can tell pretty quickly. I would say after a few weeks, maybe after a month, you can tell who it's more likely to work with. And sometimes you realize it's not the time. They're not paying attention to me much yet. So I'm still going to continue engaging with them, but, put in less effort. I'm just going to like a lot of their posts, or I'll just leave simple comments here and there to make sure they remember me. And then when the time feels right, I'll start reaching out more deliberately. And I would say I've done this quite a bit. Like, I'm doing it right now. There's a couple of people who I've been trying to get more attention off on Mastodon. I have a weirdly big platform there, given how Mastodon is very small. I have 2,300 followers there, which is big. Like, I'd say I'm in the top 5% of accounts, probably, maybe less. And I've been trying to get to a few people who have like 40,000 followers on there, which is like the top echelon. And I've had multiple of them have followed me now. Multiple of them have like shared my stuff multiple times. And I've been trying to get to the point where I feel like I can reach out directly. But again, it's like, let me see. I'm going to nudge them here. I'm going to nudge them there. I'm going to test it, and I'm going to see how they react. Did they respond to me? Did they share this? Did they seem like they were interested? If they weren't, I'm going to let go. It's the same thing as normal relationships, right? If you're trying to meet people at a party and somebody seems like they're really creeped out by you and they don't want to talk to you and they look like they're edging their way out of the conversation, don't press them.
No. Awesome. Love the example. Appreciate you getting into detail on that. Derek, let's pitch it to you. Do you have a good example to talk through?
I do. And I'm actually, maybe to some people's surprise, or maybe not because of who I am, but I want to make an SEO example because so we had a client, and this happens quite often, where we attempt to articulate how SEO bleeds into every part of what your company is doing. It's not just like the content and the words you're putting on, but everyone knows the infamous other side of, the two halves of SEO, and that's backlinks. And where we often get into the weeds is like, we think of like the deliverable side of SEO, like what we want our agency to do for us, etc. Thanks, John. And then that the backlink side, what we get wrong is we just think of those as numbers. How many of those do I have? But like way deep down, it was just kind of the best Google can do to say that like someone approves of you. Like, you have the relational authority that they've decided to give you a link. And so it's sort of backlink building should probably actually be much more of a natural, like, you should be acquiring those in much more of a natural way. So like podcasting is a great way to do that, because you'll get a link, but it's usually from a platform or something that is very relevant to you. And you'll actually notice your authority move up more compared to like going on Fiverr and, buying 1,000 links for $5. But anyways, we have this client. They're in a very tough spot. They're in the kind of YMYL. Their biggest competitor, content-wise, is Healthline. And we've all come across those articles. And when you get into spaces like that, you can write the perfect article. Like, the on-page optimizations can be dialed in to 100% and still not outrank those companies. Because at the end of the day, the search algorithm still has to sort of say like, but like, who are you to like be up here? And they have the most perfect trajectory of traffic I've ever seen. They have 0 downturns in 2.5 years, month over month, which is rare even if you're doing a great job. Like, it's just unheard of. And as we started kind of like reverse engineering what was going on, their entire marketing team, outside of us just like consulting on SEO, was participating in like mass scale relationship building. And so the way that was working is they have a dietitian on their team who acts as like their head marketer. So she can, be SME. They've got a whole team of dietitians because of the way their software works. There's like a side where you use the software and another side where you get access to dietitians to like read the data that's coming into the software. And so those dietitians are helping us create great content, but then they're using that as like the customer service or like the like customer side of the engagement where they're distributing that content all of the time to answer questions. And like they're coming to us on the topics to write about. So like we can help do our part with tools and third party, but they're constantly feeding us and then they're manually distributing it outside of the search engine. That's generating backlinks. And then their dietitians are also going on podcasts and paying these like health influencers, or not paying them. People are just like reviewing it for their own clout. And so they've got these YouTube connects all the way to the point that, like, for better or worse, their product was mentioned like on the Joe Rogan podcast. And so the authority has just built to such an extent that now they're outranking Healthline. They'll outrank like .gov websites. And it's all because they're accidentally doing it, right? Like, it wasn't like we had to go tell them, like, you need to be doing all of this for SEO success. It's like, you're actually being successful with this content because you're doing marketing on the other side, which is building relationships. And then the only other part I'll add, just for the cherry on top, is that they also made a relationship and connection to someone in a med school, and now their writing team are med students. So it's cheaper than hiring doctors or trying to get a doctor's time, but also they're like legitimate people interested in the quality of that content being good. So it's just like, there's just so much there, and that's just creating this like wave of success for them.
Wow. Super powerful example, both of you. And I think it goes to show, like, this stuff works regardless of industry. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, treat people well, like, be strategic, shine a light on them. Like, a lot of good things will happen. And I think I've learned a ton from all of you just during this conversation. We got a awesome question that like has my, I want to make sure we give it some time because I feel like it could be meaty. So let's jump to the question here. And this one's from Nina. These are like my favorite questions that start with like, oh, here we go, right on the screen. I have a boss who is really focused on generating leads and is super goal oriented. How would you convince a person on the importance of relationship building in marketing who is not social motivated? I'm just gonna like throw that one out there. Whoever wants to take it first, go for it.
Do you want it, Mariya? I think I have kind of an answer. Go for it.
I have some thoughts. I can start. I would say you pitch them based on the actual results that you're likely to get, right? I assume that you're probably doing some kind of efforts to get leads right now that are probably cold pitching of some sort. So, take whatever your conversion rate is, whatever your response rate is, and propose an experiment. Say, let's try building a few relationships here and there. Let's try doing it with these accounts that we know, or these publications that we know have this kind of reach. Let's see if this gets us any more leads, and then calculate out from that experiment, right? Do it for a month or so. See if you got anything, if you get any shares, any backlinks. Track how many views you got, track the lift to your website traffic, to your socials. And, if you get any demo requests or whatever, track that, and then see what did better. Because my guess is, personally, that anything that's warmer like that is going to get you a lot more leads than spending the exact same amount of time on cold outreach and on the more traditional tactics. You can even measure the amount of time you spend, right? I put in 3 hours into cold outreach here. This is what we got. I put in 3 hours into commenting and engaging with these influencers on LinkedIn or whatever, and this is what we got instead, right? And the numbers won't lie, because honestly, like both for myself and for clients, we've seen that the best way to get algorithmic favor, the best way to get a following, website traffic, backlinks, whatever, is to ignore the algorithms, whether it's Google's algorithm or a social media algorithm, and it's to go to the people, and it's to go to people who already have a voice, and it's to focus on these relationships. And then everything else does come, and you can track it very nicely with your graphs, with your backlink profile, with your traffic sources graph. You will see it. It's very quantifiable once it starts working, but you just got to sell them at that one initial very low stakes experiment. Yeah.
So I think I sort of think of this like I would be doing my very best to heavily pitch them on the value of relationships. If for nothing else, like for my firsthand experience of the number of services or agencies like our own who are already being picked with no matter how much content I put out into the world or in how many places I show up, they're not going to choose our agency because they already know who they're going to next because someone has a relationship with their VC or, they just have a long-standing relationship with another founder and they're just waiting for their contract to end. And I can be everywhere. I can create the best content and it's just not going to make a difference. So that would be my value pitch on certain relationships for the industry I'm in. But when I think of generating leads quickly, I sort of jump to like, either I'm going to then as a marketer become some hybrid form of like an SDR meets marketing, which is uncomfortable and also like very hard. And it's more of a numbers game. Like if we're going to make this work and like your content is like you figuring out like how aggressive you can be and then working backwards into softening it. That's not my natural approach. So that would be hard for me. And then the other is just like, how big a budget do you have? Because then I would be going to my boss to be like, well, if we don't want to spend time on relationships, then we can find people who already have those relationships and we can pay influencers. And influencer marketing kind of comes into thing. It's just that I feel like so many of us don't have the budget. And that's kind of how we became scrappy and figured out like, okay, relationship building is kind of the ticket for us. If we're not using kind of the warm leads, like Mariya said.
I love the great insight from both of you. I love the word scrappy, certainly, because you have to be scrappy to do this. And I also I want you to respond to the next one. And I want to thank our CEO at The Juice for coming in and asking a question. So Jonathan, shout out to you. Thanks for watching. But follow up to this, like real quick, because we're running out of time, maybe just like the, post collaboration, like the measurement of it all, like quantitative versus qualitative, like how are you both measuring it? Maybe Mariya, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I can expand on it a bit, is often it's a combination, right? You are looking for that lift across socials, across your website, whatever you were trying to promote, trying to see who came from where, did make a difference. And you can often see by the date, right? Whenever the other person posted something, whenever they published something, did you get a significant increase in traffic that seems to be coming from over there, right? You can often tell. But beyond that, something I hadn't mentioned, and I think it is important and easy to miss, is did you increase your potential for future collaboration opportunities? Because with these kinds of relationships, I don't think you've won once you've gotten that backlink or that guest feature or whatever it is you were chasing. I think that's just the start. It's the start of a journey, right? It's the start of a relationship. The whole point is everything you do, it shouldn't just get you a lift in the immediate term. It should also get you that increased potential and that increased opportunity and the increased chance of getting a yes for further and further collaboration opportunities down the line. So I would actually view it as a failure. For example, if I were trying to chase, I don't know, a guest spot on a podcast with somebody big, I did it and they never talked to me again, I failed. I don't care if I got 10,000 followers from that, I failed. If I can't get another opportunity from that, if the relationship is over, that's not a success. I think a success is when it keeps compounding on itself.
Playing the long game. I love it. Derek, close this out. What do you got?
I think I would follow a similar format to the great Emily Kramer over at MKT1. She just did a newsletter about this. She talked on our podcast about it, but measuring marketing and things like this more like you might product marketing versus sales. So I mentioned earlier, like, of course, there are things on the back end where did brand searches go up after the engagement? Am I seeing direct referrals come through, Google Analytics? Are there a lot of times our validation comes from that one line that we're all using now in our forms for how'd you hear about us? So I think those are some of on the back end, but I think in order to really nail this, just as importantly is setting goals and metrics around how many collaborative things did I participate in this quarter? Set a goal for yourself and see if you can get into that many. You can aim for like very particular partnerships and collaborations. I think that's fine. But I think leave it open to some degree that like some collaboration things are just going to happen. They're going to come up and they're worth counting and like pivoting and like trying to utilize at times. But that's kind of the way I see it, is there should be numbers that encourage you to seek out those relationships. And then on the back end, you should see it in all of the metrics where you see other things depending on the tools that you're using.
Awesome insight and notes. Really appreciate it. We've got a couple slides before we get out of here. It's like a marketing thing. We got to plug some stuff. We just launched follow topics on the Juice. This happened yesterday. So start following topics. It is a easier way to shrink the sea of content and start getting curated resources that matter to you right now. I think we've got a couple more slides to go. Smarter distribution, right? If you want to get your content in front of the right people at the right time, the Juice can help you do that through smarter distribution. And one of the cool features of smarter distribution that we released this quarter, which is the next slide, I believe, is revenue impact. So this question of, we all want to understand what the ROI of our content marketing program. So when we were launching this, the soundbite that I shared with everyone is that it's like content syndication without lighting your marketing budget on fire. I stand by that. I'm really pumped up about what's happening with our customers in this and just some of the results we're getting. And final slide to close us out. We're going to send out the recording tomorrow. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to all this, you'll get that in your inbox. Like I mentioned, sign up for the Juice. It's free. Start getting relevant content from brands like Kalyna Marketing and 10 Speed. Tons of great content and information out there. Mariya, Derek, thank you so much. Everyone out there, appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. We'll be doing more content distribution live, so stay tuned. More information coming your way. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.